My dad said, "You've ruined our lives. You are a burden." So I smiled and left. My mom wrote, "Don't come back." I wrote, "Okay, I just stopped paying your mortgage." And then my phone exploded. I never thought I'd be writing this, but after everything that's happened in the past few months, I need to get this off my chest. My name is Melody, I'm 29, and until recently, I was the family's unofficial ATM. This is the story of how I finally grew a spine and watched my entire family implode when they realized they'd been biting the hand that feeds them. Let me start from the beginning. I'm the middle child of 3. My older brother Jake is 32, and my younger sister Emma is 25. Growing up, it was pretty obvious who the favorites were. And spoiler alert, it wasn't me. Jake was the golden child who could do no wrong, even when he was clearly doing everything wrong. Emma was the baby princess who got whatever she wanted with a pout and some crocodile tears. Me, I was the responsible one, the one who did her chores without being asked, got good grades without constant supervision, and somehow became the family's emotional support animal. While Jake was out partying and flunking college, and Emma was throwing tantrums about not getting the right brand of jeans, I was working part-time jobs to pay for my own clothes and school supplies. My parents, Linda and Mark, seemed to think this was just my natural role in life. "Melody's so independent," they'd say, like it was a compliment. What they really meant was, "Melody doesn't cost us money like the other two, so we can ignore her." When Jake dropped out of college for the 3rd time, they paid for a gap year trip to Europe to help him find himself. When Emma decided she wanted to be a fashion influencer instead of finishing her business degree, they bought her a professional camera setup and paid for her apartment so she could focus on building her brand. When I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science, they came to my graduation and immediately started talking about Jake's new job at their friend's company and Emma's latest Instagram post that got 500 likes. I think they mentioned being proud of me once, right before asking if I'd seen Emma's new post. After college, I landed a job at a tech startup. The pay was decent, but nothing crazy. I moved into a tiny studio apartment and lived off ramen and determination. Meanwhile, Jake moved back in with my parents after his European adventure failed to provide him with any career inspiration. Emma also moved back home when her influencer dreams didn't immediately translate to income. Here's where things get interesting. About 3 years ago, the startup I was working for got acquired by a major tech company. My stock options, which I'd completely forgotten about, suddenly became worth a substantial amount of money. We're talking life-changing money. I went from living paycheck to paycheck to having more money than I knew what to do with. Did I tell my family about the windfall? Hell no. I'd learned early that any good news I shared either got ignored or somehow turned into a conversation about my siblings. Instead, I quietly moved into a nice apartment, bought a reliable car, and started investing most of the money. I also started anonymously helping my parents with their bills. See, my parents had always been terrible with money. Dad worked as a middle manager at a manufacturing company, and Mom had a part-time job at a doctor's office. They made decent money, but between supporting 2 adult children and their own spending habits, they were always struggling. Their mortgage payments were consistently late, and I'd overheard more than one heated conversation about money. So, I did what any loving daughter would do. I started secretly paying their mortgage. I set up an automatic payment from one of my accounts, and every month their mortgage got paid. I told myself it was an investment in family peace. My parents' stress levels went down. They stopped fighting about money as much, and I felt good about helping. What I didn't expect was for this arrangement to continue for 300 years. While my parents attributed their improved financial situation to Dad's hard work and better budgeting, they never questioned where the extra money was coming from. They just accepted that suddenly they could afford their bills and started spending even more freely. Jake, meanwhile, had found his calling as a professional disappointment. He'd been between jobs for about 2 years, spending his days playing video games and his nights going out with friends. Emma had decided that influencing was too hard and was now pursuing her dream of becoming a yoga instructor, which apparently required expensive retreats and equipment that my parents happily funded. The breaking point came last month during Sunday dinner. I'd been having a rough week at work, dealing with a particularly difficult project and considering whether to take a promotion that would require relocating. I thought it might be nice to have a family dinner, and maybe talk through my options with people who supposedly cared about me. I should have known better. I walked into the house to find Jake sprawled on the couch, controller in hand, complaining loudly about how his latest job interview went. Apparently, they'd had the audacity to ask him about the 2-year gap in his employment history, and he was deeply offended by their lack of understanding. "It's like they don't get that I've been focusing on personal growth," he was saying to Mom, who was nodding sympathetically while cooking his favorite meal. "I can't help that the job market is so competitive." Emma was at the kitchen table crying over her laptop. Her latest attempt at becoming an influencer, a lifestyle blog about sustainable living, had gotten 3 whole comments, and she was devastated that her content wasn't reaching a wider audience. "Maybe you should get a real job," I suggested, sitting down at the table. "I know it's not as glamorous as influencing, but it pays the bills." Emma looked at me like I'd suggested she start eating glass. "You don't understand the creative process, Melody. I can't just turn my passion on and off like you do with your computer stuff." "My computer stuff?" "The computer stuff that was literally paying their mortgage every month." Dad came in from the garage, wiping oil off his hands. "Melody, good. You're here. We need to talk about your brother." "Which one?" I asked, though I knew exactly which one. Jake needs help getting back on his feet. He's been working really hard to find the right opportunity, but these companies just don't appreciate his unique perspective. We think it would be good for him to take some classes, maybe get certified in something. The problem is the program he wants costs about $10,000. I stared at him. $10,000 for what? "It's a life coaching certification," Jake said, not looking up from his game. "I want to help people reach their potential. I've got a lot of wisdom to share from my experiences, his experiences. 2 years of unemployment and living in his childhood bedroom. That sounds expensive," I said carefully. "Well, that's why we thought you could help," Mom said, bringing Jake a plate of food. "You're doing so well with your career, and you don't have any real expenses like the rest of us." I blinked. "No real expenses. You know what I mean? You don't have a family to support or anything. Your job pays well, and you live in that tiny apartment. You must have money saved up." The tiny apartment I'd moved to specifically so I could afford to help them, though they didn't know that. "I don't really have $10,000 just lying around," I said, which was technically true. I had much more than that, but it was invested. And I wasn't about to liquidate assets to fund Jake's latest fantasy. "Come on, Melody," Jake said, finally looking at me. "Family helps family. I'd do the same for you if you needed it." "When have you ever done anything for me?" I asked. "That's not fair," Emma chimed in. "Jake and I would totally help you if you needed it. You just never ask for help because you're so independent and perfect." Independent and perfect, right? Because asking for help when you have 2 siblings who've never held down a job for more than 6 months is definitely a winning strategy. "Look," Dad said, sitting down heavily, "we're all struggling here. The mortgage has been harder to manage lately. And with Jake and Emma both at home, expenses are tight. We're a family, and families support each other. You're the only one in a position to help right now." The mortgage that I'd been paying for 3 years. The mortgage that had never been late since I started covering it. They were struggling with a mortgage that I was literally paying. "What about Emma's certification?" I asked. "How much is yoga instructor training?" "That's different," Mom said quickly. "Emma's investing in her health and wellness. It's a lifestyle choice, and Jake's life coaching thing isn't." "Jake has real potential to help people," Dad said. "He's always been good at motivating others and seeing the big picture. This certification would give him the credentials he needs to start his own business, the same Jake who hadn't motivated himself out of bed before noon in 2 years." "I need to think about it," I said. "What's to think about?" Jake asked, pausing his game. "Either you care about family or you don't." That's when something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the casual way he just questioned my love for my family while asking for $10,000. Maybe it was watching my parents nod along, like his request was completely reasonable. Maybe it was the 3 years of secretly supporting these people while they criticized my life choices and acted like I was the selfish one. "You want to know what I think about family?" I asked, standing up. "I think family members should support each other. I think family members should show up for each other. I think family members should celebrate each other's successes instead of ignoring them." "We do support you," Mom said, looking confused. "Really? When was the last time any of you asked me about my job? When was the last time you showed interest in my life that didn't involve asking for money or advice? That's not fair, Emma said. We care about you. You care about what I can do for you. There's a difference. Melody, you're being dramatic. Dad said, we're just asking for help with $10,000 for Jake's life coaching certification after he's been unemployed for 2 years and living rent-free in your house while I've been... I stopped myself before I said too much. While you've been what? Mom asked. I could have told them right then. I could have explained that I'd been paying their mortgage for 3 years, that their improved financial situation had nothing to do with Dad's budgeting and everything to do with my secret support. I could have laid out exactly how much I'd been helping them while they acted like I was the problem. Instead, I said, well, I've been building a career and trying to be responsible. And we're proud of you for that, Dad said in that patronizing tone I'd learned to hate. But success comes with responsibility. You have an obligation to help your family when you can. An obligation? Yes. We sacrificed a lot to raise you kids. We put you through school, kept a roof over your head, fed you. Now that you're successful, it's time to give back. They put me through school. I'd had a part-time job since I was 16 and paid for most of my own expenses. I'd taken out student loans for college and paid them off myself. The roof over my head had been shared with 2 siblings who were actively making their lives more difficult while I tried to stay out of the way. What exactly did you sacrifice for me? I asked. Mom looked hurt. Melody, how can you ask that? We gave you everything. You gave Jake everything. You gave Emma everything. I got hand-me-downs and lectures about being grateful. That's not true, Emma said, but she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Isn't it? When's the last time you bought me anything? When's the last time you offered to help me with anything? When's the last time you treated me like I mattered as much as Jake and Emma? You're being ridiculous, Jake said, unpausing his game. Just because you're jealous that Emma and I are pursuing our dreams instead of selling out to corporate America doesn't mean selling out? I'm selling out by having a job? You know what I mean. You chose money over happiness, and now you're bitter that we're brave enough to follow our passions. My passions. I loved my job. I was good at it. And it gave me the financial freedom to help my family, even though they didn't appreciate it, but apparently that made me the sellout. My job makes me happy, I said. It also pays for things like food and housing, and apparently other people's mortgages. What does that mean? Dad asked. This was it. The moment I could come clean and explain everything. The moment I could show them exactly how much their sellout daughter had been supporting them. The moment I could make them understand that their financial stability had nothing to do with their own efforts and everything to do with my generosity. But looking at their faces, Jake's entitled smirk, Emma's self-righteous pout, my parents' expectant expressions, I realized that telling them the truth wouldn't change anything. They'd just see it as proof that I owed them even more. They'd probably demand I continue paying their bills while also funding Jake's certification and whatever other dreams Emma came up with. So instead, I said, it means I'm done. Done with what? Mom asked. Done pretending that this is a family. Done pretending that you care about me. Done pretending that I owe you anything. Dad's face darkened. Melody, you're being unreasonable. We're asking for help, not demanding. You're not asking. You're telling me I have an obligation. You're acting like my success is somehow your right to claim. You're treating me like an ATM with legs. That's not what we're doing, Mom said, but her voice was uncertain. Isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you invited me over for dinner without needing something from me? When was the last time you acted like you were proud of me instead of resentful? We are proud of you, Dad said, but it sounded hollow. No, you're not. You're embarrassed by me. You think I'm boring and materialistic because I have a stable job and don't need constant financial support. You act like my success is somehow an indictment of your parenting because I didn't turn out like Jake and Emma. Your siblings are good kids, Mom said defensively. Your siblings are 32 and 25 years old, and they're living in their childhood bedrooms while demanding that other people fund their dreams. At what point do they stop being kids and start being adults? They're trying, Dad said. They're not trying. They're expecting. They expect you to pay for everything. They expect me to pay for everything. They expect the world to hand them success without having to work for it. And you think you're better than them? Jake asked, finally turning around to face me. I think I'm more responsible than them. I think I'm more independent than them. I think I'm more grateful than them. Grateful for what? You act like we never did anything for you. What did you do for me, Jake? Specifically, what did you ever do for me? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Emma jumped in. We were always there for you growing up. No, you weren't. You were there when you needed something from me. You were there when you wanted me to cover for you or lie to Mom and Dad about where you were going. You were there when you needed homework help or money for gas. But when I needed support, when I was dealing with bullies at school or stressed about college applications or going through a breakup, where were you? Silence. You know what? This conversation is pointless. You've already decided that I'm the bad guy because I won't immediately hand over $10,000 to fund Jake's latest fantasy. You've already decided that my job and my life choices make me somehow less valuable than your unemployed son and wannabe influencer daughter. You've already decided that I exist to serve this family instead of being part of it. Melody, that's not, Mom started. Yes, it is. You want to know what I think about family? I think family members should lift each other up, not tear each other down. I think family members should celebrate each other's successes, not resent them. I think family members should support each other emotionally, not just financially. And I think family members should respect each other enough to not make demands disguised as requests. We do respect you, Dad said. No, you don't. You respect my bank account. You respect my usefulness. But you don't respect me as a person, and you never have. That's a horrible thing to say, Mom said, tears starting to form in her eyes. It's a horrible thing to be true, I replied. But it is true, and all of you know it. I walked toward the door, done with this conversation and done with these people. Where are you going? Dad called after me. Home. Melody, wait, Mom said, following me. Don't leave like this. We can work this out. I turned around at the door. How? How do we work this out? Are you going to suddenly start treating me like I matter? Are Jake and Emma going to suddenly become self-sufficient adults? Are you going to stop seeing me as a piggy bank and start seeing me as a daughter? You're being unreasonable, Dad said, coming up behind Mom. We love you, but you're acting like a spoiled brat. We raised you better than this. You raised me to be invisible unless you needed something from me. You raised me to put everyone else's needs before my own. You raised me to believe that my value as a person was directly tied to what I could do for other people. Well, congratulations. Your parenting worked perfectly, Melody, Jake said, standing up from the couch. You're being dramatic. We're family. Families fight sometimes, but we always work it out. We don't fight, Jake. You all make demands, and I either comply or I'm the bad guy. That's not fighting, that's manipulation. You're being ridiculous, Emma said. We're not manipulating you. We're asking for help because we know you love us. If you knew I loved you, you'd care about my feelings. You'd ask about my life. You'd show interest in my thoughts and dreams and fears. You'd treat me like a person instead of a resource. We do treat you like a person, Mom insisted. When? Give me one example from the past year when you treated me like a person whose feelings mattered. They all looked at each other, and I could see them trying to think of something. The fact that they had to think about it said everything. That's what I thought, I said. You know what the really sad part is? I would have helped Jake with his certification. I would have helped Emma with whatever she needed. I would have continued helping all of you probably forever if you just once made me feel like I was part of this family instead of just a bank account with legs. You are part of this family, Dad said. But his voice lacked conviction. No, I'm not. I'm a convenient source of money and advice. I'm someone you call when you need something fixed or paid for. I'm someone you turn to when your actual children disappoint you. But I'm not someone you celebrate or support or love unconditionally. That's not true, Mom said, crying. Now, Mom, when was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When was the last time you asked about my job in a way that showed you actually cared about the answer? When was the last time you invited me to dinner without needing something from me? She couldn't answer, and that was answer enough. I'm done enabling this dysfunction, I said. I'm done pretending that being related to you makes this a healthy relationship. I'm done sacrificing my emotional well-being for people who see me as useful but not valuable. Melody, please, Dad said. You're upset, but don't make any decisions you'll regret. We're your family. We'll always be your family. Family is supposed to be a source of love and support, not stress and resentment. Family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down. Family is supposed to care about your happiness, not just your usefulness. We do care about your happiness, Emma said. When have you ever asked me if I was happy? When have any of you ever asked me what I wanted or needed or dreamed about? More silence. You've ruined our lives, Dad said suddenly, his tone shifting from pleading to angry. You come in here with your superiority complex and your accusations, and you're destroying this family. You're selfish and ungrateful, and you're hurting your mother with this ridiculous tantrum. I've ruined your lives? How exactly have I ruined your lives? You're tearing this family apart with your selfishness. You're making your siblings feel bad about themselves because you can't stand that they're following their dreams instead of selling their souls like you did. There it was. The real feelings coming out now that I wasn't immediately complying with their demands. And you're a burden, Dad continued, his face red with anger. You've always been a burden. You're negative and critical and impossible to please. You suck the joy out of every family gathering with your attitude. Maybe it would be better if you just stayed away. A burden. After 3 years of paying their mortgage, after a lifetime of trying to earn their love and approval, after sacrificing my own emotional needs to keep their family functional, I was a burden. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to contradict him, to defend me, to show some sign that she disagreed with his assessment. Instead, she just stood there crying, which I'd learned long ago was her way of avoiding taking any position that might upset someone. You know what? I said, and I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. You're absolutely right. I am a burden. I'm a burden because I have expectations. I'm a burden because I want to be treated like I matter. I'm a burden because I think family should be about more than financial transactions. I smiled, and I could see it unsettled them. They were expecting me to cry or argue or apologize. Instead, I felt this strange sense of relief, like a weight I'd been carrying for years had suddenly been lifted. Thank you for clarifying where I stand, I continued. It makes my decision much easier. What decision? Mom asked. The decision to stop being a burden. I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove home. My phone started ringing before I was even out of their driveway, but I didn't answer. I had some things to take care of. The first thing I did when I got home was call my bank. I canceled the automatic payment that had been covering my parents' mortgage for the past 3 years. Then I transferred the money that would have gone to their next payment into my savings account instead. The second thing I did was block my family's phone numbers. I wasn't ready to hear their voices or read their messages. I needed time to process what had just happened and decide how I wanted to move forward. The third thing I did was open a bottle of wine and order Thai food. For the first time in years, I had a Sunday evening that was completely my own, with no family drama or financial obligations or guilt trips. It was surprisingly peaceful. I slept better that night than I had in months. Monday morning, I went to work and told my boss I was interested in the promotion we'd discussed, the one that would require relocating to our company's Seattle office. I'd been hesitant because it would mean moving away from my family, but suddenly that seemed like a feature rather than a bug. My phone had been buzzing all morning with calls from blocked numbers, but I ignored them. Around lunchtime, I got a text from my mom's friend Janet, who I barely knew. It just said, "Your mother is very upset. Please call home." I deleted the text without responding. Tuesday afternoon, I got an email from Emma at my work address. The subject line was, "Emergency, please read." The email was a long, rambling message about how I was being unfair and how the family needed to stick together, and how she couldn't believe I was punishing everyone because I was in a bad mood. I forwarded the email to my personal account and blocked her work email address. If there was a real emergency, they could call 911. Wednesday, I came home to find Jake sitting on my doorstep. He looked like he'd been there for a while. "We need to talk," he said, standing up as I approached. "No, we don't." "Melody, come on. You're being ridiculous. Mom's been crying for 3 days. Dad's barely eating. Emma's having panic attacks. You're destroying the family over a stupid fight." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not participating anymore." What does that mean? It means I'm done being the family's emotional and financial support system. It means I'm done pretending that being treated like garbage is normal just because we share DNA. Nobody treats you like garbage, Melody. 3 days ago, Dad called me a burden and told me I've ruined your lives. How is that not treating me like garbage? He was upset. He didn't mean it. He absolutely meant it. And you know what? He was right. I have been a burden. I've been carrying the financial and emotional weight of this family for years, and it's been a burden on me, so I'm setting it down. What are you talking about? You don't carry any financial weight. You live alone in your little apartment and spend your money on yourself. I stared at him. Even now, even after everything, he had no idea what I'd been doing for them. Jake, who do you think has been paying Mom and Dad's mortgage for the past 3 years? What do you mean their mortgage? Who do you think has been making the payments, because it sure as hell wasn't them? His face went blank. What are you talking about? I've been anonymously paying their mortgage since 2021. Every month the payment comes out of my account. That's why their financial situation improved. That's why they stopped fighting about money. That's why they could afford to support you and Emma. That's not... You're lying. Why would I lie about that? Do you think they magically got better at budgeting? Do you think Dad got a secret raise? The only thing that changed was me starting to help them. But they never said, they never knew. I set it up to be anonymous because I knew if they found out, they'd start seeing it as an entitlement instead of a gift. Jake sat down heavily on my steps. You've been paying their mortgage every month for 3 years? $20,400 a month? Plus, I've helped with other bills when they needed it. I've probably given them over $100,000 in total. Why didn't you tell us? Because I knew this would happen. I knew that the moment you all found out I had money, you'd start seeing me as an ATM. I knew you'd stop being grateful and start being demanding. And I was right, wasn't I? The moment Dad thought I had money to spare, he immediately started making demands and calling me selfish for not wanting to fund your life coaching fantasy. Jake was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "So, what happens now?" Now you all figure out how to pay your own bills. I've canceled the mortgage payments. Your parents will get a notice that their payment is overdue in about a week. Melody, you can't do that to them. They'll lose the house. They should have thought about that before calling me a burden and telling me I've ruined their lives. They didn't mean it. Jake, I've been helping them for 3 years without asking for anything in return. Not gratitude, not recognition, not even basic respect. All I wanted was to be treated like I mattered. And instead, Dad called me a burden and told me to stay away. So I'm giving him exactly what he asked for. What about Emma and me? We didn't know about any of this. Emma called me selfish and materialistic for having a job. You called me a sellout and questioned whether I cared about family. You both acted like I owed you money just because we're related. You both treated me like my success was somehow taking away from your opportunities. We were just frustrated. You were entitled. There's a difference. Jake stood up. So that's it. You're just going to abandon the family. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just not enabling anyone anymore. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be based on something other than what I can do for you. And if we can't pay the mortgage, then you'll have to figure something out. Get jobs. Maybe become self-sufficient adults. Revolutionary concept, I know. Melody, please. I know we haven't been the best family, but we can change. We can do better. You can do better. Whether you will or not remains to be seen. What would it take for you to help us again, Melody? The fact that you're asking that question shows that you still don't get it. I don't want to be needed for my money. I want to be wanted for who I am. I want to be valued as a person, not as a resource. We do value you. No, you don't. And the really sad part is, you probably never will. You'll always see me as the responsible one who should handle the hard stuff so you don't have to. You'll always see my success as something that should benefit you rather than something to be proud of. You'll always see my emotional needs as secondary to your financial ones. Jake left after that, and I spent the evening researching apartments in Seattle. The promotion was looking better and better. Thursday morning, I unblocked my parents' numbers just long enough to send them a text. Jake told me you didn't know about the mortgage payments. That's probably something you should discuss with your bank. Also, I've accepted a promotion that requires relocating. I'll be moving to Seattle next month. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone started ringing within seconds, and the voicemails and text messages were coming in faster than I could delete them. From Mom. Melody, Please call us. We need to talk about this. We had no idea about the mortgage. Please don't move away. We can fix this. From Dad. You can't just abandon your family because you're upset. We raised you better than this. Call me immediately. From Emma. I can't believe you're being this petty. Moving away isn't going to solve anything. You're just running away from your problems. From Jake. Mom won't stop crying. Dad's having chest pains. Emma's talking about moving in with her boyfriend because she can't handle the stress. Are you happy now? I read them all, then block their numbers again. I wasn't responsible for managing their emotions anymore. Friday afternoon, I got a call at work from my mom. She'd somehow gotten the main office number and convinced the receptionist to transfer her to my desk. Melody, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. Mom, I told you I needed space. Honey, we need to talk. This is all just a big misunderstanding. We love you so much, and we never meant to make you feel unappreciated. It's not a misunderstanding, Mom. It's a pattern that's been going on for years. But we didn't know about the mortgage payments. If we'd known, we would have been more grateful. Would you? Or would you have just started expecting it? Would you have seen it as proof that I owed you more? That's not fair. Mom, what did you think had changed? 3 years ago, you and Dad were fighting about money constantly. You were behind on bills, stressed about the mortgage, barely making ends meet. Then suddenly, everything was fine. Did you really think Dad had just gotten that much better at budgeting? We thought, I don't know what we thought. We were just grateful that things were easier. But you never asked why they were easier. You never questioned it. You just accepted the help and assumed it was your right. We didn't know it was help. We thought we were managing better. Mom, your mortgage payment is $2,400 a month. Dad brings home maybe $3,000 after taxes. How did you think you were affording a $20,400 mortgage payment plus utilities, food, car payments, and supporting 2 adult children on $3,000 a month? Silence. You didn't think about it because you didn't want to think about it. You wanted to believe that everything was fine so you could keep spending money you didn't have on children who should have been supporting themselves. Melody, please, we made mistakes, but we can fix this. Just come home and we'll talk about it. There's nothing to fix, Mom. This is who you are. This is who this family is. You take and take and take, and when someone finally says no, you make them feel guilty for setting boundaries. That's not true. Isn't it? Right now, instead of apologizing for calling me a burden, you're trying to guilt me into coming back by talking about how upset everyone is. Instead of acknowledging that you treated me badly, you're focused on fixing the financial problem. Instead of asking what you can do to repair our relationship, you're trying to manipulate me into resuming the relationship on your terms. I just want my family back together. No, you want your ATM back online. There's a difference. I hung up and asked the receptionist to block calls from that number. That weekend, I drove to Seattle to look at apartments. The city was beautiful, and I found a perfect one-bedroom place with a view of the Sound. I put down a deposit and signed the lease. For the first time in years, I was excited about the future. Monday morning, I put in my 2 weeks' notice at my current position and started planning the logistics of my move. My boss was supportive, and my new team in Seattle was excited to have me. Everything was falling into place. Tuesday evening, I came home to find my parents' car in my apartment complex parking lot. They were sitting on the hood, and they'd clearly been waiting for a while. We need to talk, Dad said as soon as he saw me. No, we don't. Melody, please, just give us 5 minutes. You had my entire childhood to treat me with respect and kindness. You had 3 years of me secretly supporting you to show some appreciation. You had last Sunday to choose your words carefully when I was asking for basic consideration. You don't get 5 minutes now. We're your parents, Mom said. That has to count for something. It counts for a lot. It counts for why this hurts so much. It counts for why I spent 3 years trying to help you even when you didn't appreciate it. It counts for why I'm moving across the country instead of just cutting you off completely. You're moving because of us? Dad asked. I'm moving because I've realized that as long as I stay here, you'll keep treating me like a backup plan instead of a daughter. You'll keep seeing me as someone who exists to solve your problems instead of someone whose problems matter too. Your problems matter. Mom said. When have you ever asked about my problems? When have you ever offered to help me with anything? You never seemed like you needed help. I never seemed like I needed help because I couldn't afford to need help. I was too busy being the stable one, the reliable one, the one who had her time together. I was too busy making sure everyone else was okay to admit that I wasn't okay. What do you mean you weren't okay? Dad asked. And for the first time, he sounded genuinely concerned. I mean, I've been depressed and anxious for years. I've been seeing a therapist to deal with the emotional damage from growing up feeling invisible and unimportant. I've been questioning my self-worth and my ability to form healthy relationships because the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally only seemed to love me when I was useful. We didn't know, Mom whispered. You didn't ask. You never ask. You never check in on my emotional state or my mental health or my happiness. You call when you need something, and when you don't need something, you forget I exist. That's not true, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Dad, when was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? He couldn't answer. When was the last time either of you asked about my job in a way that showed you actually cared about my career goals? Silence. When was the last time you invited me to dinner without needing help with something, or wanting to discuss Jake and Emma's problems? More silence. When was the last time you told me you were proud of me without immediately changing the subject to one of my siblings? We are proud of you, Mom said. Are you? What are you proud of? Specifically, what have I accomplished that makes you proud? You have a good job. What kind of job? What do I do for work? What company do I work for? What's my title? They looked at each other, and I could see them trying to remember if I'd ever told them these basic facts about my life. You work with computers, Dad said finally. That's not an answer. That's a guess based on my college major from 7 years ago. We're sorry, Mom said. We should have paid more attention. Yes, you should have. But the fact that you didn't shows me everything I need to know about where I stand in this family. We can do better, Dad said. We want to do better. Why? Because you need me to start paying your mortgage again? No, Mom said quickly. Because we love you and we don't want to lose you. So you don't love me. You love the idea of me. You love having a daughter who's successful enough to make you look good, but distant enough that you don't have to actually invest in her emotional well-being. You love having someone who will bail you out of financial trouble, but won't demand anything in return. Melody, that's not fair, Dad said. What's not fair is spending my entire adult life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. What's not fair is sacrificing my emotional health to maintain relationships with people who don't value me. What's not fair is being called a burden after years of carrying this family financially and emotionally. I shouldn't have said that, Dad admitted. I was angry, and I said things I didn't mean. You meant them. Maybe you regret saying them out loud, but you meant them. And you know what? You were right. I was a burden. I was a burden because I expected to be treated like I mattered. I was a burden because I wanted emotional intimacy instead of just financial transactions. I was a burden because I thought family meant more than just people who shared DNA. It does mean more than that, Mom said. Does it? Then prove it. Show me that this relationship is about more than money. Show me that you value me as a person, not just as a resource. How? Dad asked. Start by respecting my decision to move to Seattle. Stop trying to guilt me into coming back. Stop making this about what you need. And start thinking about what might be best for me. But we need you, Mom said. No, you don't. You need my money. You need my stability. You need my willingness to solve your problems. But you don't need me as a person. And you never have. That's not true, Dad said. But he couldn't meet my eyes. Dad, if I died tomorrow, what would you miss about me? Not what I did for you, but who I was as a person. What would you miss? The question hung in the air, and their inability to answer it immediately told me everything I needed to know. I thought so, I said. You should go. I have packing to do. Melody, please, Mom said, starting to cry. Don't end it like this. We're family. We're related, I corrected. Family is something you build through love and respect and mutual support. Family is something you earn by being there for each other emotionally, not just financially. Family is something we could have had if you'd ever seen me as more than a backup plan. They left after that, and I went inside and poured myself a glass of wine. 2 weeks later, I was in Seattle starting my new job and my new life. That was 3 months ago. My parents have sent me a few texts since then, mostly updates about their financial situation and requests to talk things through. Jake has reached out twice. Once to ask if I'd reconsider helping with his certification, and once to inform me that he'd gotten a job at a call center and was finally ready to be responsible. Emma has sent me several Instagram DMs, alternating between apologies and accusations. I haven't responded to any of them. Because here's the truth. I don't owe them my attention. I don't owe them my forgiveness. I don't owe them access to my life just because we share DNA. What I owe is to myself, to protect my peace, to honor my boundaries, to live a life where I'm valued for who I am, not what I can provide. For the first time, I feel free. For the first time, I feel like my life is mine. Do I miss them? Sometimes. I miss the idea of family. I miss the fantasy that maybe one day they'd wake up and see me, really see me, for the person I am. But every time that ache creeps in, I remind myself of the reality, the dismissive comments, the ignored achievements, the constant demands, the moment my own father looked me in the eye and called me a burden. That was who they were when they had the chance to be better. That was who they chose to be. Seattle has been a fresh start. My new job is challenging in all the right ways. My team respects me. My boss values my input. For once, I'm not the invisible one in the room. I've started making friends, exploring the city, and even picked up hobbies I never had the energy for before. I joined a book club, signed up for a pottery class, and started hiking on weekends. Slowly, piece by piece, I'm building a life that feels full, that feels mine. Every now and then, I still get messages that slip through. A mutual friend will forward something my mom posted on Facebook, a dramatic plea for her lost daughter to come home. Emma tagged me once in a passive-aggressive Instagram story about betrayal and forgiveness. Jake sent me a meme about family being forever, followed by a Venmo request for $50 as a joke. I don't respond. I can't. Because I know that the moment I open that door, they'll rush through it, dragging all their expectations and demands and guilt with them. And I'm not going back. Some nights, the guilt tries to creep in. The voice in my head whispers, maybe you were too harsh. Maybe you should give them another chance. Maybe family really is everything. But then I remember the calm I felt that night after I canceled the mortgage payments. I remember the peace of eating Thai food on my couch without worrying about the next demand. I remember the relief of blocking their numbers and realizing I was no longer responsible for carrying the weight of 4 other adults on my shoulders. That peace is worth more than any illusion of family. Because family isn't supposed to break you down. Family isn't supposed to drain you dry. Family isn't supposed to make you feel like a burden for daring to have needs. Family is supposed to love you without conditions, to celebrate you without competition, to stand beside you without asking what's in it for them. And if the people you're related to can't do that, then maybe they're just relatives, not family. So, this is my story. My name is Melody, I'm 29, and I finally stopped being my family's ATM. I finally stopped being invisible. I finally chose myself. And if you're reading this, wondering if it's okay to walk away from people who make you feel small, who take without giving, who only love you when you're useful, let me be the one to tell you, it's more than okay. It's necessary. Because you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not what you can provide. And sometimes the bravest, healthiest thing you can do is smile. Say, thank you for clarifying where I stand, and walk away.